You're hanging out in the House of Sunny podcast, where it's always sunny, mostly because of your host, comedian and YouTuber, Sunny Lohman. Want to know what Sunny and her friends are thinking about this week? Well, here she is, Sunny Lohman.
Welcome, I'm here with sidekick Doug from The Rational Capitalist and Ashley. Hey guys, how's it going?
Hello.
Hey. We're going to get into a bunch of news items. Well, really just two main focuses here. We're going to talk about culture war in general. We're going to talk about Hillary and the left. And we're going to talk about this stuff going on in Britain. Basically, there's no free speech in Britain. And it's all geared toward, unless you happen to be a Muslim, then I think you can say whatever you want. But everyone else has to shut up. Right. Now would be the time where I would play our voice messages, but we don't have any. So if you want to tell us a joke for next week, call the number 707-681-5834, and we will play it on air. We don't discriminate. We play everything. And usually I go on and I say, hey, everybody, send me some jokes, and I forgot to do it this week, so here we are with no jokes. All right.
I have a knock-knock joke that I told my kids.
Oh, let's hear it.
Knock-knock.
Who's there?
Who's there?
King Tut.
King Tut who?
King Tut who?
King Tut-key fried chicken.
Oh, such a dad joke.
Oh, you know that TV show Dad Jokes on Facebook?
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
I love that
gosh,
show.
So
they had a great joke on a recent episode, and let me just think for a sec so I can get it right and get the punchline right. Okay. How did the Greeks cut their pizza?
Oh.
I don't know.
With Little Caesars.
Oh.
I love that joke. All right. So, if you've been paying attention to the news, you know that, first of all, Hillary Clinton fell a couple times while climbing down some stairs.
Yeah.
And if you haven't seen that video, Google Hillary Clinton falls in India. You'll see it. But you can also see, I'll put it in the links here.
Did you see that meme? That meme that's going around where the two security guards are holding her up as she her legs are falling, so it looks like they're holding a corpse. And the meme says, "Weekend at Hillary's."
I have seen that. I shared that this morning.
You did? That was yours. I'm sorry.
That's okay. All right. That is so funny. And
it does. It looks like they're holding a corpse up.
Honestly, this is how I felt about her during the entire presidential campaign, that she was like dead and being kept alive with like blood infusions from
like
babies.
Children's blood.
Yes.
Baby blood.
And she kept passing out and falling down, and I really didn't expect her to live to the election. She was so obviously sick.
Do you remember that creepy one where she passes out on 9/11 getting into the car, and then they were trying to cover it up, and she comes out, she goes into some apartment in New York, and then they clear out the block, and all the press are about 40 yards away from her and kind of a perimeter, and she walks out onto this New York street, and there's nobody around her.
Right, no security.
And she's sort of like waving and
holding
talking.
a cup of coffee, waving or something, like, hey, everything's normal.
So
totally staged.
It was like Kim Jong-un-ish.
It was. I remember watching that video, and, I'm one of those people who watched all 10 videos from 10 different angles of that moment because I just thought it was crazy. And she got stiff and fell forward. It was so weird, and it was not normal. It wasn't a normal passing out.
No.
There was so obviously something really wrong with her. And for them to just blow that off and not really say, and they still haven't said, and then it's conspiracy theory stuff, but this stuff is real. Like, she wore those weird thick glasses. Like, she's obviously had a stroke of some kind. And now she's walking down these steps, and she can't walk down steps. And then I just saw the headline came out an hour ago that she actually sprained her hand slipping on the steps. So she's also just so fragile.
I would have let her drop. Like, if I was Secret Service, I would have been like, "Oh, sorry. Oh, my bad. My bad."
I heard she's a real
kind of
bitch
give her an extra nudge.
Yeah. Yeah.
Have you seen Nancy Pelosi, speaking of that, some of these brain freeze videos?
I have.
Where she like stops and she's kind of like looks like she's deranged, and then she stumbles over her words and then says a non sequitur. I mean, it's really, these are the people that are leading this party.
I know.
These are like
Maxine
people.
Waters.
Oh,
All these people are old and like decrepit, and they've been dictators for so long in their little fiefdoms and doing their little thing. They're just so corrupt.
yeah.
You know that they're physically and mentally off. They're just, I mean, yeah, I don't know what to say.
How old is Hillary?
75, right? Something like
Yeah,
that.
Pelosi's almost 80.
Yeah.
And Bernie's almost 80.
Schumer is like 70.
It's awesome.
Maxine Waters is in their 70s. Dianne Feinstein is 80.
Wow.
All of these people are fucking old. And they've been doing this for decades. Anyway. All right, here's Hillary in India basically insulting the entire country.
If you look at the map of the United States, there's all that red in the middle where Trump won. Now, I win the coasts, I win, Illinois, Minnesota, places like that. But what the map doesn't show you is that I won the places that represent 2/3 of America's gross domestic product.
In other words, rich people voted for me. Therefore, what? That's better? How is that a Democrat message?
If you didn't vote for me, you're an unproductive slob from the flyover states. That's what you just said.
Yeah, but meanwhile, it's the flyover states that pay the taxes. Like, it's the people in the cities on the welfare and stuff. Anyway, let's keep going.
Well,
So I won the places that
And people clap. Oh
are
my.
optimistic, diverse, dynamic, moving forward. And his whole campaign, Make America Great Again, was looking backwards. You didn't like black people getting rights. You don't like women, getting jobs. You don't want to, see that Indian American succeeding more than you are. Whatever your problem is, I'm going to solve it. So,
Ugh. So
That's
only
so
the
negative.
people in the
Ugh.
cities are forward thinking. Only the people in the cities are optimistic. Only the people in the cities like black people and women. Unbelievable.
Right.
And
that's
then
just such a smear. It's disgusting.
it's incredible. And this is what is in her soul. This is what she thinks. And then she went on to say, I'm just going to read this part, we do not do well with white men, and we don't do well with married white women. And part of that is an identification with the Republican Party and a sort of ongoing pressure to vote the way your husband, your boss, your son, whoever believes you should. So in other words, if you're a married white woman, you really...
Hello, that's me.
Yes. You can't think for yourself. You're under the thumb of your husband, your boss, or your son. Like, what? Your boss.
All men are these like potential Rasputins that are just have this spell on women.
Yeah.
And they're just dim-witted rubes of their Rasputin husbands. It's
Yeah.
awesome.
This is how they view people, though. I mean, they view people as like manipulatable in that way, and they are manipulative themselves. So no wonder, and it does work, I guess, a lot. They do actually succeed at manipulating a lot of people. But
So
they also think that, a few, and I don't think they really think this, but you saw those Russian ads that supposedly influenced the election. Like, they're the stupidest.
well, that's why I voted. Yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't know what to do until the Kremlin programmed me. I'm like a Manchurian voter. They just say the magic hypnotic code word,
Have you
and then
seen
I
these,
go pull the
Ashley?
lever.
I haven't seen
So
them.
you've heard the story that the Russians influenced the election by doing these like Facebook ads, right?
Yeah.
So,
Oh, yeah.
See, Ashley doesn't even know she was influenced. That's more proof that she was influenced.
Ashley, you are
She's
who
just a
Hillary
Russian
is talking
stooge.
about. Yes, you're a Russian.
Oh.
You're a Trump Russian stooge.
Good
These-
job, comrade Ashley.
These ads were so ridiculous. Like, it was like Hillary and Trump and then Jesus in the center, and it's like Jesus wants you to vote for Trump. Like, it was bad graphics. It was
Hey,
like
I fell
Church
for
of
that.
Scientology graphics,
Speak for yourself.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah,
Well, remember,
No.
I wasn't on Facebook, so
that's true. You missed all of that.
during that time, yeah.
But
I didn't
I
really
think,
want to be
I don't know if they
close.
were on Instagram too, but they spent like $100,000, which is nothing. And they
Yeah.
put out a few ads, and those ads were ridiculous. And somehow that is supposed to show and prove that the Russians manipulated our elections. Because
Ashley, I don't know if you know this, but you weren't on Facebook, but when you went to the grocery store, if you look closely at like cans of corn and vegetables and stuff in the grocery aisle, they were actually all in the shape of Putin's head.
Oh.
You didn't know it. You were being influenced at all times by Putin. He's just diabolical.
Is there like subliminal messages on the radio too?
How we're being
We don't
influenced.
even know.
We don't even know.
No one even knows.
It's like
it's impossible to tell.
It's in the air. It's everywhere. It could be subliminal behind our commercials that we watch on TV. He's everywhere.
What else could explain why this deranged, hateful corpse who smears 90% of the American population every chance she gets didn't win the presidency?
Shocking.
I'm just shocked by it.
Shocking.
I have something to say. I had written this on my blog, and I want to make this point about her. Make America Great, dig. Remember what her slogan was?
Forward? I'm with her.
I'm with her, and I had written this on my blog, and this is such a... I'm going to pat myself on the back because I like this identification I made. But if you notice, I'm with her emphasizes that you revolve around her. She's the center of gravity around which you orbit. You're with her. She's not with you. You're with her. So she doesn't represent your aspirations, but you have to pledge your fidelity to her views and her plans for your future. You're with her. And Trump, on the other hand, the Make America Great, that does not connote passive obedience, but action. He's saying, I'm going to make something happen. I'm going to do something, and you're going to be better off as a result of what we do together. We're all going to work together to make your life better. So just think of that. Like, this is, maybe I'm making a little too much out of that, but I think it's significant because that's how she thinks. You're with her.
It's certainly more accurate than that Make America Great is some sort of... Make America Great Again is like a looking back toward wanting to go back to days when black people had no rights or something, and women couldn't vote or couldn't get jobs. When did women not be able to get jobs, by the way?
It's such a projection, I think, of their own inner view of the world. That
it really is.
It's
is
either
exactly what I was trying to
racism
say.
or no racism.
Yeah.
That's the only lens that they see the world through, is exploitation or no exploitation. So if you're looking forward at no exploitation under her watchful, omnipotent central planning mind. And if you're looking backwards at anything you think is good, you're actually aligning yourself with racism and exploitation of some kind. It's just such a pathological way to look at the world. It's vile.
Well, it's not just that. I mean, it's that it really does reveal that underlying idea that people are not, like, they don't have free will. They're not good. That they're manipulatable. They're stupid. It's just a real negative, malevolent view of mankind and people.
Everyone is just a pawn. Of like Fox News and talk radio. That's how they see the population.
And so follow me along here, but there's also what came out this week is an article about a study done at Yale, how physically threatened or fearful a person feels is a factor in whether or not you are a Republican or a Democrat.
Yes, I saw this in the Washington Post.
Yeah, so what they did was, before people answered some survey questions that indicated what their political attitude was, they were asked to close their eyes and imagine being visited by a genie who granted them a superpower. And for half of them, it was that you could fly. And for the other half, it was that you would be invulnerable to harm, completely physically safe. And then you answered these questions. And for the people who were asked to imagine that they could fly, responses were just kind of the same. There was a clear difference between Republicans and Democrats in their attitudes. And then the people who were asked to imagine they were invulnerable, people who were Republicans actually answered more questions like the Democrats. So what they were saying was, we've converted conservatives to liberals, I hate to use those words, Republicans to Democrats, by just telling them they're safe. And their conclusion is that Republicans live in fear and are motivated by fear. And that, instead of like maybe the Democrats are naive idiots who can't project beyond a week what their stupid policies might, bring to fruition.
Well, you know what my take on this was I thought it was actually a great exposure of the fact that Democrats, their basic premise is a fantasy, because the essence of that study was, if we start with a fantasy, so start with the premise that you're invulnerable, that there is nothing to fear in the world, and that everybody's safe. Okay, let's start with that, and then go from there. That's a total circular circular
and
reasoning.
That literally
like, it's ridiculous.
is how they think. I mean, they want this utopia, this fantasy that's not reality. It's not.
It's like
reality.
saying, what if mud were cake, and what if water were wine, and what if balls rolled uphill? Let's start with all these bizarre, fantastical premises, and then deduce from that what we would all. Well, if that, of course.
Your analogy is perfect. If mud were a delicious chocolate cake with sprinkles, would you eat it? Would you eat it then?
Well, then that proves
we just converted you to a mud eater.
Right, because then
you eat mud. Oh my God, you have a problem.
And it's particularly offensive because the main function of government is to protect our rights from danger. So, those of us that are concerned that someone might rob us, that someone might take our money, that someone might kill us, that a foreign country might try and invade us or attack us. I mean, these are all real concerns that, I guess conservatives, Republicans, realistically identify. And so, of course, if you take away the premise of reality and the actual facts of human nature, that we probably would all come to different conclusions.
Socialism will work this time.
Yeah, just imagine. I could see them. I think what they're like gunning for here is like send Republicans to this clockwork
a concentration camp,
like re-education center.
They want to reprogram us.
Of puppies and dogs and Easter bunnies, and then we all live happily ever after. It's amazing.
It is amazing. And so this is what they think of us, and how this is literally, I mean, we're talking about the leadership, but you and I, when talking about like what to talk about on the show today, I feel like the thing to talk about is the culture and the left, and that the left is a very serious enemy. And why, and like, that we need to actually not give them any room and be outraged and stop them in their tracks. This is ridiculous. We are sanctioning this crap,
Right.
And Milo Yiannopoulos came out with like a 30-minute video. It was out of character for him. He's usually a little more. He was very serious in this video, and I thought it was good. He made the video because Pamela Gellar's daughters were outed as her daughters by they're kind of, one of them is a pretty popular Instagrammer. They all had followings on Instagram, and I can't remember which. The Daily Beast, that's who did it. The Daily Beast outed these three pretty young ladies as Pamela Gellar's daughters. Pamela Gellar is constantly living under, she's got a fatwas against her. Actually, people have been convicted, a man was convicted of plotting to behead her and is in prison for this. I mean, this isn't like a joke. This is actually happening to her.
And just so everyone knows, Pamela Gellar is a heroic and fierce defender of the freedom of speech. And so she was the one who organized the Draw Muhammad protest, against people that
she puts up posters in New York that say, basically jihad is bad, and gets in trouble for that. And but she pushes and she spends her money and her fortune on combating Islam.
And she's
radical
a real
Islam.
hero. I mean, she is literally risking her life.
Yeah, and her
freedom.
fortune. And so they have been very, very careful not to reveal who her daughters are. And the Daily Beast doxed them. And
That's sick.
And not only did they then, of course, lose a bunch of following because they weren't political, they weren't agitating or being activists or anything like that, but of course, Pamela Gellar is considered, pretty extreme, I guess, and so now they lost a lot of followers, so basically kind of destroying some of their income, but maybe worse, now they're in danger. Now they are personally in danger of being
vicious.
beheaded.
Like, why would you do that? Like, what's the point of that other than to really put her and her family in jeopardy?
That's exactly
and here's someone
what the
who's
point of that
defending
is.
free speech.
Yeah.
And this is what the left has become. They are fiercely anti-free speech. I mean, they are literally trying to seize power to stop people from talking and speaking freely.
And they are for some of these really hostile forces in the world, like Islam. I mean, they're defending Islam. So Milo does this video and he says, okay, hey, everybody, this is freaking serious. Like, game over, game on, or not game, but like, we need to take this serious and we need to punch back. And he didn't exactly say what, but he particularly criticized David French over at the National Review and an article that the guy had written where basically he was saying David French cares more about manners than he does about, principle and winning the culture war and defeating this just unbelievably horrible group of people. And David French responded with a piece in the National Review. By the way, all of these links are going to be in the notes under the YouTube video, and also I'll put it on my blog. So he writes a response piece called "Civility Isn't Surrender." And I read it this morning, and yeah, I mean, I don't even know. He acknowledges that civility is not the main virtue. I mean, I think everybody, he even says, civility is not the virtue, because there are times when civility is actually a vice. I think that's a phrase that somebody famous said one time. Civility in the face of evil is a vice.
Right. Not
a virtue. It's some phrase like that, and that's true. We need to fight these people who are trying to crush us and crush our freedoms. And so, but there was this thing in his piece where I feel like it just revealed his whole problem. I'm just going to read it now. He says, "Our true moral obligations are complicated. They're simultaneously dependent on and independent of our listener's response. You have an obligation to speak the truth even when the truth hurts. Harming your opponent, however, isn't your goal." What? Yes, it is. You're seeking to persuade, yet you know the very act of attempting to persuade can also enrage. Okay, no, I'm not seeking to persuade. Like when you're dealing with a Hillary Clinton, or you're dealing with the Daily Beast, who, for no reason except absolutely pure wickedness, doxed a few girls, you're not persuading them. You're demoralizing them. It's like war. You don't go to war and try to, we're not winning the fucking hearts and minds of these people.
Right, it's beyond that now.
It is beyond that. It is. You don't go to fight a war in Iraq and win hearts and minds, or in Afghanistan or whatever. You crush your enemy until they are demoralized, and they will never get up again, and they will never pick a fight with you again. That is what we should be doing. We're not trying to persuade those fuckers. And maybe there are some Democrats that are still like reasonable people, but most of those people are bleeding off now anyway. I mean, you can't be paying attention. You can't look at Hillary Clinton and not see a corrupt, evil, wicked cunt. And somebody said to me, I posted that thing that weekend at Hillary's meme, and somebody goes on my page and says, like, this is cruel, making fun of somebody who's got like a handicap. Basically, I'm like, it's a good thing you can't see into my mind. Because there's no amount of cruelty that is too cruel for Hillary Clinton.
Right.
You just said yourself, like, if you were those guys, you'd be like helping her fall. You would be like, you definitely wouldn't be helping her stand. And if you had to, like,
just a polite disagreement. I mean, these people are after the type of power that's a threat to the values of anyone who's freedom loving, anyone who loves liberty, who values their own personal freedom, their ability to speak freely, to trade voluntarily with other people and cooperate with other people, who loves, those American principles of freedom of speech and freedom of assembly and being able to speak your mind and being able to, create your own business and trade with people and have your own family.
Defend your family with a gun.
Defend yourself. And these are the values that they are attacking. I mean, this is not just a slight little disagreement on some, policy issue or something. They
want to control every aspect of your life. Every single one.
They're telling you, you cannot criticize religion. You cannot speak your mind on any topic. I mean, in the universities, and of course this is well documented by everyone, I'm sure our listeners know, how crazy and insane identity politics and cultural Marxism has gotten on the campuses, where these are essentially like, Salem witch trial level.
It is thought police, like of the Soviet Union university purge level. And I think they did that in China too, didn't Mao purge the people who didn't think right and just murdered millions.
Yes.
Outright.
Yeah. And I mean, and that's the bridge between actual physical action that we've seen historically after the Bolshevik Revolution, after the Cultural Revolution in China, in Vietnam under Cambodia and the Khmer Rouge, and Cuba, all the places, Venezuela, where these socialists get into power, is they attack, imprison, and murder dissidents.
Yeah, and I mean, there's not a gun to our head now, but these people think nothing of destroying your livelihood.
But what I'm saying is the bridge to that action is what we are seeing. It's normalizing and providing the sort of intellectual and ideological groundwork for a kind of purge and genocide. When you see courses in colleges now being offered called whiteness is violence, where they're actually literally saying that white people are evil, that they're violent, that punch a Nazi type of a thing.
Punch a Nazi when everyone is a Nazi except an extreme social justice warrior.
Right, because Nazi now means you just disagree with them. They don't really mean an actual Nazi, like a true Nazi. They mean if you disagree with them on anything.
Yeah.
Socialized medicine, Islam, the threat of Muslim terrorism.
Even if you're on the left and you say, I'm kind of for free speech, they're like, you're a Nazi.
You're a Nazi. Yeah. So they're building this bridge intellectually through identity politics and these movements on campus where their kids now are coming out of college saying things like, I don't really believe in free speech. Like, I don't think you should be able to offend someone.
Right. And racism should be banned, and speech is violence. And there are all kinds of articles that come out where speech is like, well, it's stressful to be offended, and so therefore you could end up with like a disease if you get too much stress. It's like, you got to be kidding me. Anyway, David French is wrong. And civility is not a virtue. It's just how you're being. And I don't have a problem with people who are civil, but I also don't have a problem with people who are uncivil. And I actually think both are needed. I think that we need more uncivil people. I think we have too many civil people. And I think that's happening. Honestly, I don't, we've talked about Trump a lot. Before he even won the primary, the only thing I liked about him was that he was willing to be tough and uncivil. My favorite moment, and I said this in a video, and I've said this before on a podcast too, when the Mexican president said, we're not paying for that fucking wall. And Trump's response was, that wall just got 10 feet taller. Mm-hmm. That's the kind of shit that I loved about Trump before he won the primary, even when I was still really skeptical about his policies and everything. And
he's unapologetic.
He's unapologetic. Mm-hmm. He's willing to be tough. He has motivated other people to be that way. You have people like Milo Yiannopoulos. You don't have to agree with everything these people think, but they're pushing back against this. Oh my gosh, Ashley, are you serious?
We riled up the dog again.
Okay. I don't even know what I was saying. What was I saying?
Pushing back. Milo and these guys are really pushing back.
So they are pushing against the left, but they're also emboldening other people on the right to be more unscripted, to be more firm, to be less civil. And civility is not what's called for in most of these situations at this point. I mean, I think... Ashley, you gotta mute yourself right now.
Yeah, I'm gonna go. I'll be back. I'll take care of my dogs. Just
mute it. So
this is podcast episode 19, and we're still working on the dog thing. Anyway, so I don't agree that civility is like some big virtue or something, and that's how we win. We're not going to win with civility. You don't fight a war. We didn't win the revolution with civility, even though we had very civil statesmen-like men. They shot guns at people. Is that civil? George Washington was extremely civilized, but he shot guns at people. At the British.
At some point, you cross a line. And I think that line is getting closer and closer, unfortunately, because they're initiating it. I mean, when you see these people like Shapiro and Milo and these others going to college campuses, and there was some other videos recently that I'm sure we all posted on Facebook of, did you see the one with, well, actually there was a whole montage of them, but the one I remember was Yaron Brook and, what's the guy's name? Sargon
of Akkad, yeah.
Yeah. He was talking with Yaron Brook, and I think they were in London, somewhere in England. And,
I haven't watched that yet. Yaron Brook is the chairman of the Ayn Rand Institute, for those of you who don't know. Sargon of Akkad is a YouTuber.
And so they were having some sort of like kind of discussion about the alt-right or something like that. And of course, we've seen this scene 1,000 times now, but these protesters break in, and it turned into a fist fight.
I did see this, yeah.
And they finally shuffled them out.
They were British Antifa.
They were Antifa, and these people broke in and really started a fight, and they ushered them out, and you see these people and how violent and how nasty they are. There's no turning back. You are not convincing these people that the freedom of speech, is a value. These people are gone. I mean, they're just looking for a fight. I don't know how they're doing. It's sad, but
I would feel better. I don't know if this says something about me or like I've just crossed a line maybe in my head. I watched that and I thought, punch him. I'm watching that. I'm like, why isn't the crowd of 100 students trying to listen to this surrounding these 8 fuckers and pounding them?
They rent a room. These people go to hear these people that rented the room. They probably paid money. It's their forum. It's their thing. And these people just bust in and start a fight with them. I mean, that's like someone just literally punching you in the face. You sit there and take it?
You sit there and take it like a fucking sissy.
And then I got a kick out of this.
I'm done with this.
There's this girl with purple hair in the hallway, and someone was like filming her with their iPhone. And she goes, "How dare you film people without getting their permission?" She's standing in the law after a group just started a fight in an auditorium, and she's haranguing this guy about not getting her permission to film her. This is how delusional they are.
I don't even know what to say about that. These people need a punch in the face. That's it. And I'm not saying, it's okay to punch a Nazi. That's different. They are the ones barging in and trying to shut people down from talking. I'm not saying we should go to their events and punch them.
No,
I'm saying
if
they attack us, like, why weren't they surrounded? Why didn't the whole crowd get up and rush the stage and kick those fuckers out violently? That's what should have happened.
Yeah, like, we're not going to take it. We're here to peacefully have civil discourse in a university.
Yeah.
And you're not allowing it. You're trying to stop us from hearing these people speak that we voluntarily choose to hear speak.
And there is something wrong with our side, the civility argument, that, oh, we're just not like that. Why aren't we like that? Why don't we stand up for ourselves? We're just sanctioning. It's sanction of the victim. It's pure Ayn Rand's theory on sanction of the victim.
I think part of it is not having the moral high ground intellectually,
Yeah,
because what these people, when you have a sort of like moral ideal in mind, that your freedom, and we talked about this, the Patrick Henry idea, give me liberty or give me death, where you rather die than live as a slave.
Right.
When you have like liberty as a moral ideal, it motivates you to a higher purpose. I think these people have a moral ideal. It's completely twisted, and they have an evil philosophy, but they are operating from the standpoint of, they think they're right. And they, to their credit, act as if they're right. They are fighting. They are physically fighting. They are not afraid to walk into someone else's speech and try and shut them down.
Yeah.
And so
walk
when you're
into
fighting,
a room with 100 adversaries, a group of 8 guys, they're not afraid. And
so we got to seize the moral high ground where we see that and say, no, we're as morally idealistic in our defense of liberty and freedom as you are in your attacks on freedom. And when that happens and we have that sort of moral sense, then you feel like fighting.
Yeah,
it's not just these are like 5 crazy kids. They're stupid. They're just extreme little nutbags. Get them out of here, and we can continue. When you start to see that extreme is actually what's driving the agenda, and when this is turning into kangaroo courts on campus, where they're persecuting and ending the careers of anyone that speaks against them. When that starts to affect you personally, I just don't think it's affecting people personally yet.
Maybe that's it. Maybe it's that, okay, so maybe it's a couple things. That we lack the moral high ground, really. And one of the things that David French said in his article, after this part that I just read you, the line that comes after that is, yes, you should love your enemies, but you also have to understand they're still your enemies. Why should we, love our enemies? Like
what is that? That's like a Christian idea.
A Christian altruistic piece of bullshit. And that is one of the reasons we don't have the moral high ground. We're supposed to fucking love these Antifa freaks.
Yeah, turn the other cheek, forgive your enemy.
No, we're not. And so there's that. There was something else I was going to say about what we lack, but part of it could be I grew up in a bad neighborhood.
It's the day-to-day.
Wait, let me say this. I grew up in a bad neighborhood. I've seen true wickedness, like real brute, nasty people who bullies, that are really violent people, kids. And so I don't, I'm not naive about it. Like I feel like I'm a little more, I believe in it. I believe that there are people that are just bad.
You have the fear factor that the Republicans have, right?
I guess so.
You do.
Yeah, I guess
that's true.
I mean, this kid that shot 17.
But it's real.
This kid that shot up 17 kids, that is to me so inexcusable. There were so many signs, and that there's nothing that kid, there's no consequence that psychopath could, if you tortured him, I wouldn't feel bad about it.
But Sonny, if you imagine that a genie in a bottle could make you invulnerable to Nicholas Cruz's shooting rampage.
Yeah, let me imagine that for a second.
Don't you then have sympathy for him, and
Let's
then
see.
we shouldn't arrest him,
Maybe.
and we shouldn't put him in jail when he was threatening to kill people, like in the years leading up to it?
Yeah.
Just imagine the genie in the bottle.
Since I'm invulnerable, it was just like a pillow fight, really. You can't blame him.
That's a great illustration of that mindset.
It really is. We take away the guns. It's not Nicholas Cruz who's the problem.
But, also getting back to your point about being on the front lines of violence, when I was in school, we had some incidents with this is 90s the olden days of the 90s, early 90s, where we had the equivalent of what Antifa would be now. I forgot what they called themselves, but they were essentially the same thing, where they were doing those kinds of things. They were, we would have a speech, or have a speaker in or something for our campus club, and these people would, steal the literature and throw it in the lake, or they would deface our signs and just stupid stuff like that. And and then you watch these videos of these kids breaking in, and I was at some other things that got almost violent, and you see it on the front lines. You see it in their face, the willingness to be violent, and I think it's almost a visceral level fear that you got from when you were a kid and you saw really violent people, and when you experience that kind of vitriol, that these people are serious. If they could, they'd probably kill you if they thought they could get away with it.
I think that's true. And I mean, they might not actually pull the trigger, but you can understand how people become Nazis presiding over a concentration camp. And the moral high ground is part of it. They really have to believe that they have this moral righteousness, but they convince themselves of it.
Yeah, that they're right and that they need to kill their enemies.
A lot of it at root, I mean, some of these people are really evil psychopaths. They really just want to hurt people, and they're looking for a reason to do that. And I believe that they're just bad people, and they're not going to be persuaded, and they really just need to be pounded.
But they're also being trained in the universities to believe that, all their, and it's how ironic, too, that Hillary goes on her apology tour, that clip you played earlier, and she was talking about how, the Trump voter rube, who wants to go back in time, and that Trump's going to solve all their problems with, his stuff. Well, look at their view, that everything in life is caused by white people. And this is how dumb it's gotten. Whiteness. That it's just, this is
white
what's standing
males,
in your way.
White males in particular is the patriarchy. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what's holding you down. It's not your own independent, volition and your ability to improve yourself and do something positive and productive in your life and have great relationships and be a good person of high character. It's nothing to do with that. You're being smashed by the white man, and you've just got to lash out at it. And so they're collectivizing and dehumanizing classes of people. In this case, I guess now it's white guys. And you create a psychology, a pathological psychology in these kids where they just see any white person as the enemy. I mean, they don't look at you and say, I have to judge Sonny and, I have to judge Ashley, as individuals. They just see white person.
Well, and you've just described racism. And I saw a meme that was sent out yesterday where, and part of this even relates to what's going on in South Africa with the taking of the farmer land and the calls for genocide. But this meme said, basically white people stood on the shoulders of black slaves, then the black slaves are freed, and now the white people are way up on these, high planks. And the black person says, hey, could you help me up? And the white person says, I didn't, slavery's over. Help yourself. And I'm thinking, that's how they look at it. We have this position of privilege because we got it on the backs of black slavery. Anyway, I want to say something about these. To your point that they have this moral high ground. When people call Antifa people or Muslim terrorists cowards, that drives me crazy because they're not cowards. I don't think they're cowards. Even the ones covering their faces, that's just being smart. So they don't get arrested so they can go beat up people the next day.
Yeah, it's a tactic.
It's like guerrilla tactics during the American Revolution. We hid behind trees. We weren't cowards. We're trying to win the freaking war.
Mm-hmm.
So,
good point.
Anyway, I want to move on to the next story because it's somewhat related, but also in the news. This is a really big deal. Lauren Southern, a journalist, was detained trying to get into England and denied entry for racism. Brittany Pettibone, a journalist, this is all in this past week, detained and denied entry into England for inciting racial hatred, along with her boyfriend Martin Sellner, a right-wing activist for inciting racial hatred. So that's 3 right-wing, personas, public people who were denied entry into the UK because of things that they have said, I guess, about Muslims. And in Lauren Southern's case, she had just conducted a social experiment where she said gays for Islam or something on a rainbow flag, like they were handing out flyers that said that to see if they could get away with it because somebody, Vox or somebody had done something where they'd done gays for Jesus or like Christian, something about Jesus being gay. Oh, I know what it was. Jesus was gay. And so they were handing out flyers saying Muhammad was gay or something like that. And they, some Muslims took offense and it caused a little bit of a stir. And because of that, she has been called racist and not allowed into the UK.
Well, that's coming on the heels of the arrest. And
hang on, I'm going to get to that.
Okay. Oh, sorry.
So these 2 journalists and a right-wing activist, 2 right-wing journalists and a right-wing activist. And of course, if you read the news, they say extreme right-wing, like far right-wing. I mean, these people are just conservatives. They're literally just conservatives. They're not white nationalists. They're not like, they're not the alt-right or whatever that is. And then in the same week, Paul Golding and Jada Franson, who are British activists, who are also very vocal about the Muslim immigration and what's been going on, in the midst of a 3rd town coming out in the news of having basically hosted a crazy freaking Muslim-run sex ring of little freaking girls. Mm-hmm. The police knowing about it, social workers knowing about it and covering it up because they didn't want to seem racist. This is a 3rd town in England where this happened. I mean, there might be others that we don't even know about yet. But this is something that's going on. They're talking about thousands of young white British girls that were drawn into these prostitution and not just convinced, but threatened. And in some cases, like one guy actually burned down the home of one of these girls when she didn't do what he said. I mean, these were like real threatening situations for these girls. They felt like they had to be prostitutes. They were drugged. They're like 15, 14, sometimes 11 years old. One was murdered. There's an 11-year-old who got pregnant 6 times when she was 11 and had 6 abortions, forced abortions.
Jesus.
Oh. That's what came out in the news. And Paul Golding and Jada Franson are activists who were speaking out about one of these towns and what happened. I think it was the Rotterdam one or whatever. They were arrested last May as part of, I'm going to read this little blurb here. They were arrested last May as part of a probe into the distribution of leaflets. So this is speech.
Leaflets?
This is speech. The distribution of leaflets and some online videos posted during the trial of in the same month after which 3 Muslim men and a teenager were jailed for rape. Okay, so they were saying, these immigrants are raping British girls. And for saying that in a leaflet, they were arrested, and they were now convicted of the crime is religiously aggravated harassment. And the judge said the duo's words and actions demonstrated hostility toward Muslims and the faith of Islam. So 2 people went to prison in Britain for saying, I don't really like Muslims and Islam. It seems to be a problem. A lot of girls are getting raped, and I have a problem with that. And I don't think we should have any more Muslim immigration. We have too many Muslims here, and they're causing problems. Islam is a problem. You can't say that. They're going to prison.
Wow.
And then 3 people got kept out of the country for racism because they kind of pretty much think the same thing. And so that's Britain. There's no free speech over there. That's all Britain. But I don't feel like we're that far off from that. I mean, we're told that if we criticize Muslims, we're provoking terrorist attacks.
Yeah, no, this is the ideology behind that law is the ideology being pushed on college campuses.
Speech is violence.
Speech is violence, and this is what they want. And Could it happen in America? I think America is really the only country left in the West that
That's right.
doesn't literally have laws on the books. Canada's doing this.
Right.
Britain's doing it. All the other continental countries in Europe are doing it. America is really the last bastion of free speech in the
but
world.
even here culturally, we've already lost it. No one published the Danish cartoons.
Right.
And when Pamela Gellar hosted her Draw Mohammed cartoon contest, and they were attacked by ISIS. I mean, 2 guys with guns. People don't remember this. This is crazy. 2 guys armed to the teeth showed up to shoot up that place and slaughter everybody in that contest, and they were stopped by a security guard at the front door. They were both shot dead.
Right. I remember
So that happened, and I remember the news coverage of that after wasn't, oh my God, ISIS almost just slaughtered a bunch of Americans who were just exercising. This was like a free speech event.
It's a sacred American right of free speech.
Right. No, it was, hey, you're provoking these people.
Right. Like you're getting what you deserve.
Yeah,
if you piss these people off.
You know that they are offended when you draw Muhammad. Why would you draw Muhammad?
And that was Trump's response too.
It was Trump's response to that.
And that was one of the reasons I really had. This is way before the election.
That's a really good point. Let's all remember that he actually said the same thing about Pam Gellar. That event was provoking terrorist attacks. What a bunch of pussies we are. And then if you remember in San Bernardino, those 2 Muslims that shot up their workplace party, their freaking, Christmas party, and their neighbor saw some suspicious stuff but didn't say anything because she didn't want to be seen as racist.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And, even within our own circles of people who are pretty freedom-oriented, if you say something like, I want to limit Muslim immigration, you're a xenophobe and a racist.
Exactly. That's the most frightening thing, is that the people that even are on our side have fallen prey to this kind of thinking.
Yeah.
Where the moral right to freely speak your mind and even state any opinion, much less a fact, but certainly just state any opinion and have your own belief, is trumped by this fixation with offensiveness.
Yes.
Or outrage over being possibly offending someone. So those people have the moral high ground. If you're a victim or somehow have been offended, your feelings are more important than someone else's right to freely speak their mind, even if they're wrong. And when people once again realize what's at stake and take the moral high ground for free speech, no matter how offensive it is to anybody, that's when we'll win. But right now, I think even our side and people that traditionally would be defending free speech have fallen prey to this movement.
I really think that reasonable people can look around the world and see what's happening. And that, when 9/11 happened, I thought that we wouldn't be accepting immigrants from Saudi Arabia or Iran or... I naively thought that we wouldn't take in Muslim immigrants until maybe we won the war.
No, it's the opposite has happened.
We've actually increased under Bush, under Obama, under everybody. We have increased Muslim immigration to this country. Since 9/11, it has gotten so much worse because we're trying to win the hearts and minds and prove that we're not actually against a religion, even though they brought down 2 giant buildings in New York.
Well, what people have to distinguish is between the principle of freedom of religion and the principle of a political movement that's trying to defeat your country or overthrow your way of life. It's one thing to have an abstract body of principles, which our country is founded on, the freedom of religion and freedom of religious expression. But when that starts to take the form of coordinated, violent action to change or overthrow the institutions of our government, which terrorist attacks are, when they fly a plane into a building, or they attack an embassy or kill our diplomats or shoot up places, whatever they're trying to do, that's coordinated political action. I mean, that's war. That becomes the same similar in principle to how we would have reacted to
How we did
Nazis
react to Pearl Harbor.
to Pearl Harbor, to communists, to Nazis. You can have, in 1870, you can be a communist. Okay, like if that's you just have this abstract idea, but 1950, when there's a Soviet Union, and they've got the bomb, and we're in the midst of a Cold War, and you're espousing communist propaganda, now you're engaged in sort of aiding and abetting an organized force that's trying to overthrow the government. So we can't then, you have to distinguish these things.
Yeah. Uh-oh. I think I've muted my phone.
No, we can hear you.
Oh, can you? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I think you're right. And, people kind of focus on there's no declared war. I don't know. I don't really, there's so many things should have been done differently after 9/11, but definitely not increasing Muslim immigration from all of these Middle Eastern countries. Definitely not that. And now since then, we've had a number of terrorist attacks. They're getting a little bit normal. And so...
Well, Europe is ground zero for this.
And then, all you have to do is look over to Europe and be like, this is our future if we don't wake up. And especially the free speech issues. That is our future if we don't start really pushing back on the already violent situation that we're in, where Antifa is shutting down free speech. Antifa and other groups, and by the way, faculty, university faculty people being involved in this stuff.
Yeah, so, they're the parents of this whole thing. I mean, they
really are. I kind of feel bad for the students somewhat, because I do think they're being brainwashed, and they are being incited to violence from some of these adult nihilists who are their teachers. So I don't know whose mic. Somebody's rubbing their mic or doing something. And it's. I thought it was maybe me, which is why I thought maybe I accidentally muted myself because I was touching it. But I was touching my mic. There it goes again. Who was that?
Yeah, not me.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sitting still.
Me too.
Both of you don't
Very
move.
still.
Freeze.
Okay, now I'm not hearing it. All right. So yeah, I think that the message of the show is, like, I feel like we're in a serious situation here and people aren't taking it seriously. This book came out by this guy, what's his name, Pinkerton or Pinkett.
Steven Pinker.
Yeah, where everything's rosy. And it may be true that there are technological advances, lifespans are great, poverty is down, but this is really ominous. And we are at a crossroads of losing free speech, I think. Maybe we have 10 years left, maybe less, before we're not allowed to criticize Islam. And that seems to be the big one. And as Lauren Southern said in an interview I saw after she was detained, she's like, these are basically blasphemy laws. This is
Sharia law.
This is a religion telling people what they can and cannot say, and that having the force of government behind it.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's happening in Britain, and and to Hillary Clinton's point, do we want to go back to that, or do we want to go forward from that? Do we live in a civilized, Western, enlightened society where, okay, now I'm hearing that scraping again, whatever it is. Who moved?
I didn't move at all.
I swear it didn't move.
All right, maybe it's your dog again. Did you put a mic on your dog? Is he licking it?
Yeah.
Is your dog licking the mic? Yeah.
Sounds like a dog licking. I think you're lying. I think you've got some problems going on. Anyway, so I agree with Milo on this one. I think people are being too civil. I think it's time to regard these people as evil and wicked. And I'm talking about the people who are attacking free speech with violence, and the professors who support them, and the people who run seminars saying whiteness is wicked. Those people need to be attacked. I don't mean go attack the professor violently. I mean that guy shouldn't have a job.
Yeah, you got to try and defund these university professors You have to
At
go after
minimum.
government funding and subsidies. You have to make it very clear, I think, to just the public and parents who are sending their kids to these schools, like what they're getting.
At minimum, that guy should not have a job. Should not have a job. How is it that people aren't creating some sort of... Is anyone else hearing this? Like, I can't even speak. It's so bad. All right, we're ending the show on that note. That's it for our show today. Thank you, Doug and Ashley, and Ashley's dog. Thanks, everybody out there, for joining us. This podcast and all my work is fan-funded right now. Let us know what you think in the comments. Like, this is a really big topic. I feel like there's so much here. There's so much that could be said about this. I really would like to hear the feedback of the audience on this one. You think I'm wrong about this? You think we need to be civil? Let me know. If you agree, let me know. What do you think? If you go over to Patreon /House of Sunny, you can help fund this podcast. And by doing that, you would actually be joining my very cool elite squad. And we have different rewards over there that make it worth your while. So head on over there, and thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next week, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the House of Sunny podcast. Go check out Sunny on YouTube at her channel, House of Sunny. Everything Sunny does is fan-funded, and because she's likely to get kicked off and demonetized on every platform at some point, please support her over at patreon.com/House of Sunny. Become one of Sunny's elite squad and have access to behind-the-scenes footage, t-shirts, special events, and more.